Mr. Danjean, what is so dramatic about federalization of Ukraine?
I think beyond federalization, we all know that the real problem is that Russia is not really recognizing the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Ukraine. We have seen that with the annexion of Crimea and also with the destabilization we see now in eastern Ukraine. So the real point behind the words, I would say, beyond the word federalization, is the lack of recognition of Ukraine's sovereignty by Russia. And we all know that this question of federalization is just a pretext to try to diminish the territorial integrity of Ukraine. This is what it is about.
So what's the difference between revolutionaries at Maidan Square and the revolutionaries in Donetsk? Because both sides are revolutionaries, and in one case they are denied, and the other case they are famed.
Well, in the case of Maidan, you had a kind of a spontaneous demonstration organized because President Yanukovych failed in keeping his promises. He said he would sign an agreement and then he backtracked. And then it prompted the reaction by the street, actually. What we have seen, what we are witnessing now in eastern Ukraine is something organized. It's not something so spontaneous. It might become now genuine, I think. There might be a lot of people genuinely wanting more autonomy or fearing what will be decided by Ukrainian authorities. I don't put that in doubt, but the origin of this, it has been prompted by a foreign intervention, which is a Russian intervention, exactly what we have seen in Crimea. So it is a bit of difference of nature between the demonstration. Having said that, when you're right, it's true that we should be also careful the way we address the claims, because in some cases in eastern Ukraine there are genuine claims for more autonomy, for respect of different languages, of some specificities, and the Ukrainian authorities have to be very careful in the way they address these claims. I think there are provocations by pro-Russian element, by Russians themselves sometimes, but there are also behind that genuine claims about some kind of identity, claims by some Russian-speaking people in Eastern Ukraine. It has to be addressed properly through constitutions, through the rights, through a charter. This has to be negotiated, but we cannot negotiate under the threat of foreign intervention.
As with your military background, do you think the risks of civil war are real?
Yes, indeed, because I don't like to be too alarming, because I think we might stay cold blood, and cold head, and to be very careful in what we say, in what we predict, and what we assess. But still, once you have identity claims, and once you play like Russia is doing, you play on the fears for identity of the people, it might become out of control. And that's the main concern to me. It can spill over, it can get out of control, and even Russia somehow believes that it does control these people in eastern Ukraine, but I'm not sure that it's so well controlled now, because once you have put this fear in the head of the people, they're ready for everything. We have seen that before in former Yugoslavia. I well remember in the 90s, Milosevic played with the fears of the Serbs in Croatia, in Bosnia, telling them that they would be overwhelmed by other nationalities. And these people took arms, and after that it was very difficult, even for Milosevic himself, to try to restrain these people from going to war. So we have to be very careful.
You touched Balkans, so shouldn't we learn from Balkans, for example, to send their peacekeepers now and not to wait? But today Ban Ki-moon said no, he doesn't see the reason now to send. So what do you think about it?
I think what we should learn from in the Balkans, we sent peacekeepings very early in this conflict with no effect. Because, sometimes we send peacekeeping troops just to hide our political lack of power, I would say. I think this crisis in Ukraine, luckily, has not turned into a conflict yet, and I hope it will remain the same. And I think the only solution is political. What we can learn from Yugoslavia is that after 3 years of conflict, all the parties went back to the negotiation table, and it was a political deal that was struck. And it's only politically and diplomatically that we can find an end to the crisis. Taking weapons, acting under the constraints of weapons, acting under the constraints of military interventions on both sides, it's not wise. And it can only lead to further escalation. And if we want to de-escalate, it's only diplomatically and politically and constitutionally.
Do you expect results tomorrow from Geneva?
I do. I think it's a unique opportunity so far to discuss frankly and to put on the table what does really matter. How do we de-escalate? Because I don't think it's in Russians' interest to escalate. So we have to find a way out. The way out will be probably to have a minimum agreement on the way ahead, the transitions in Ukraine, political and constitutional transition in Ukraine, elections. Of course, there are debates about the date. The Russians do not agree with the date. They do not recognize the authorities. I think they should start to recognize that there is a need for a legitimate electoral process in Ukraine. This should be the minimal to be agreed upon tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Danjean. Thank you.